Anyways. All right, so this is Smack Apparel Talking the Talk. We are joined today, another segment of the football meets football world. We are joined by Zac Mcgraw. And Zac Mcgraw, for the people that don't know, he plays for the Portland Timbers, ex-teammate of mine, good friend. He is you are probably the only person in the history of the Army to play to play for Canadians national team. True or false?
I mean, that's got to be true, and
It's got to be
maybe
true.
even the only one in the future too.
It's got to be true. It's got to be true. No, but Zac McGraw, we have him on this week. It's a perfect week to talk to him. Army upset Air Force last week, which I want to talk about because I have some questions because you were celebrating it kind of hard on the internet. And I had some questions about that because you ruined Air Force's season. I want to talk about you were a former four-star safety.
Yeah,
Four-star?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Four-star safety. Could have gone to Oklahoma, I think, right? Played for Bob Stoops.
yeah, yeah,
Could have played
yeah,
for Bob Stoops, picked to go play soccer at Army. Just awesome guy, interesting story. So we're just going to talk about it a little bit. All right, so Zac, thanks for coming on, bro.
yeah. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no worries, man. Well, first off, congratulations. Zac had a massive breakout year on the soccer field this year, blocking shots left and right, just an absolute animal. Congratulations on a year like that. Just how's catching up from the soccer season, how's the body feeling? How's the mind feeling? I know that the first time you go through a season like that, it can be kind of a grind, but so how's all that going?
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is. It's the MLS here is like it just feels like it never ends kind of thing, and especially when they throw in Leagues Cup being the first time this year, it is like they could have had the season end the entire month earlier, and then they're like, nope, we want to do Leagues Cup this year. So let's throw that in July to your guys' schedule. But it was good.
How was
It
that?
was a
How
good
was
year.
Leagues Cup? Like, how did the locker room respond to Leagues Cup? I know it's something new, but like, it seemed like the prize money was massive, and then it seemed like it was kind of fun to do the competitions versus a different country.
Yeah, and I mean, it came probably at the perfect time for us because we were kind of like struggling that point in the MLS year. So it kind of just gave us like a reset in the middle of the year. And you're playing like these teams like Monterrey, Tigres, yeah, obviously other MLS teams, but these teams that like you always see on the internet getting always winning like CONCACAF Champions League and playing in the CONCACAF or the Club World Cup, and just being able to test yourself against those guys. It was. I mean, I know a lot of our Latin population was really excited about it here in Portland. But yeah, I
It's
mean,
funny.
just
It's funny when
the
you play those games, isn't it? Like especially for the Latin guys on your own team, like they almost turn on a different switch. Like you see, like they play the game a little bit more. You know what I mean? Like they'll do the cheap shots, they'll do the little extra dives, the little extra rolling. I always love playing those games versus the Mexican teams because like the Spanish guys just like flipped on a switch. You're like, whoa, this is awesome.
Yeah, yeah, you're always talking like, oh, I hate how, Liga MX plays are always doing it. It's like after the whistle, they're rolling on the ground, and then next thing you know, like my right back's doing the same thing.
Next thing you know, your whole team is doing. You're like, man, I start doing this. Like, is this how? Should I be doing this too? No, I remember that. That's awesome though, man. And then just like to speak on your experience a little bit. I made a joke that you did go to West Point. We'll get into that a little bit more, but you had your first experience of the international taste playing for Team Canada. What was that experience like? And for you, is it something that obviously the what's going on with the Canadian national team is a little bit crazy with the coaching situation and all that, but for you, what were your takeaways from that experience? And is it something that speaking to the national teams, that's something that you think you're going to be involved in going forward? Obviously, there's a big World Cup coming up around the bend.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a wild short career for me. I didn't really see like from where when I came in when I was a rookie on your team. I never would have imagined that like a national team would have even been in the picture. And no one knew I was Canadian. So,
Yeah,
I
they
did,
caught me
of
by
course.
surprise. That one
You
caught me way by surprise.
I did the logical thing of dropping a little Canadian like birth certificate photo on the internet. And then, a couple days later, I'm on a video call with the former head coach, Canada, John Herdman. And he's like, yeah, we want to bring you in to the Gold Cup, which was in like 3 weeks at that time. But no, it was a great experience because I mean, watching Eric Williamson have his success at the Gold Cup in 2021, watching it growing up, and the next thing you know, I'm wearing a Canadian jersey, representing a whole country, and and playing against the U.S. in the quarterfinal.
I know. So the whole time that we were teammates, I was, Captain America, West Point, graduated from West Point. How many professional soccer players have ever played in the MLS from Army? Do you know?
And the MLS, I mean, the low before the MLS was a league, I'm sure somewhere in there, but in the MLS, none.
So you're the first West Point graduate to play in Major League Soccer, and then you played for the Canadian national team.
Yep. I
That's
know. I don't even
incredible.
know what to say when people say that because it just sounds so bizarre.
That's incredible.
But
That's
yeah.
incredible, man. So the whole time we're teammates, I'm like, oh, Captain America, this is awesome. Was there any hesitancy because of the success that you were having that when that call comes in that like part of you is kind of like, well, maybe I have a chance to make the U.S. team, or is that just something that, it really wasn't on your radar? You were trying to take the opportunity that was in front of you.
Yeah, it was more so just trying to. I mean, because obviously I've been American. Like everyone's known, I've been American. The U.S. national team never reached out once, and then when Canada finds out I'm Canadian for a couple days, they immediately reach out. So it's kind of more of like, um, I mean, I would have shown the same amount of pride to play for the U.S. and I did with Canada, but it was one of those things where you go where you're wanted kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I know it's a tough situation with U.S. soccer because it's one of those things where like if you're not within the system, like it's really hard to crack into the system. So, in your position especially, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, if I say no to Canada, are they going to call me back again? Or is it, you know what I mean, kind of one of those weird opportunities, which I'm sure it kind of put you in an awkward spot. But how much, so for playing for the Canadian national team, like when your buddies from Army found out that you were doing that, was there any like, were they giving you any bit of shit? Was there any back and forth, or how did
Of
this
course,
happen?
man. I wouldn't even say there's back and forth because I was just accepting everything that was coming. The amount of texts I got saying like, I'm always rooting for you, but I hope you guys lose today against the U.S. the U.S. team. I'm like, fair enough, that's fine.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So just going back a little bit to West Point, because I remember when we first roomed together in Costa Rica, you told me a little bit of a story about how you were one of the first, if not you might have been the only, one of the first, if not the only Army graduates to get accepted into this new law that was signed in when Trump was in office, right? And I don't want to butcher this, so like if I butcher it, like feel free to correct me in my storytelling. But there was something where he signed into law, pretty much like on stage of graduation, that a football player could go play and try out for the NFL and not have to do his service because he was representing the Army on a different level. And then you were actually one of the first, if not the only athlete from Army to get grandfathered into this new law that he signed. And that was kind of the situation that you were put in to become an MLS player, right? Did I get that right?
A little bit, a little bit.
That was a
So
little off. To be fair, it was like 5 years ago. I've got two kids. I'm
no,
tired.
yeah. No, but I mean, you didn't get much wrong at all. From an Army standpoint, if you beat Navy and Air Force in the same season, you win the Commanders in Chief trophy.
And this is in all
And
sports. All sports.
this is only football.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So when Army beat Navy and Air Force that year, they go to the White House a couple months later. So this was my junior year spring, and a friend of mine who's actually still in the NFL, he asked former
What's his name?
President
What's his
Trump,
name?
Elijah Riley. He plays
Okay.
on the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay. Nice.
So yeah, but President Trump shook everyone's hand, and when it was his turn, he said, I'd really love the opportunity to go pro right out of college because realistically, if I go serve and try to come back, there's no chance I'm making it in the NFL kind of thing. And basically, he got a lawyer and changed the legislation right there. So I was the same year as Elijah Riley, and the following year, we both knew that it was a possibility. So, he put in work on the football field, I put in work on the soccer field, and we both, made it. I got drafted, he got picked up. But yeah, it's a crazy story. Yeah,
That is a crazy story. I mean, he shot his shot. Like you're talking to the
yeah,
president of the United States, and you're like, "Hey, I'd really like the opportunity to not, to go play pro in this sport.
Yeah, and I mean that's such like a if you think about it, such a bold question to ask like any member of the government, let alone, the president of the United States.
Well, to be fair, that was probably the right president to ask because he's probably the one that would be like, yeah, I don't understand why that's a law. Like, I'd like to fix that one up. Like, yeah, we'll clean that up for you, no problem. That's crazy, man. So if that law doesn't get signed, if that doesn't happen, if that law doesn't get signed, then what's the path? Like, do you have to leave West Point and then go serve, and then you can come back and play a sport?
Yeah, so it would be I mean there's been previous instances in the past where people go into the active duty army, they'll serve 2 years and go into reserves while they're playing for an NFL team. There's another guy on his name is Brett Toth. He's a lineman on the Eagles. As far as I know, he's
And
still
he's
with them.
currently in the reserves.
And he's yes, and
Okay.
he like he teaches at I don't know exactly which school, if it's a high school or a college, but he teaches like military science as like his military obligation. But he was also active duty before that and before he was on the Philadelphia Eagles.
That's crazy. Was there any party that was like, man, if I play for Canada, I might, I might lose. I might lose whatever this is. Like, I might be risking it a little bit by representing another country.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you got to take everything into consideration.
Yeah, I mean, luckily it's
Every
Canada. Luckily it's Canada, so there's a lot of peacefulness between us and the Canadians. Yeah, that's wild. That's a wild story. So going back even further, because like I know that you had the opportunity to play for a lot of different schools, right? You're from California. You could have gone to UCLA for soccer. I know that one. I'm sure there were other schools. If you're getting recruited by UCLA, you're getting recruited by a bunch of other schools. But you ultimately decided to go to West Point. Was your family in the military? What was your reasoning behind that? Was it something that's like a legacy thing to be involved in the military, or was it just a personal choice?
Yeah, I mean, no one in my family's gone to West Point before, but my dad served enlisted active duty for a couple years. He's not like a 20 years retired um, service member or anything, but he it was. I mean, pro soccer wasn't even in like back then in high school in any realm I thought was a possibility, right? So um, obviously, I wanted to get a good education. Like I said, pro soccer was not in like I didn't think I was going to be able to make money playing soccer. Um, and it was more so of a thing I asked my dad, like, where do you think I should go to think about my future and future employment, future like if a lawyer, MBA, that kind of thing. And he said like, personally, I'd want you to at least come check out this school, West Point, with me. And um, I went there for a high school ID soccer camp, and my dad did. And I mean, it's a beautiful campus. It's hard not to fall in love with. It's right on the Hudson, right in New York. But yeah, I mean, talking to the current soccer players that were on the team then, who became my teammates, they just kept saying like, the education speaks for itself. You have an automatic job like um, with that will look good on a resume because you have leadership experience. You have this experience, leading 40 other soldiers as a 22-year-old and having to make decisions, whether that's like on like a battlefield or whether that's like just taking uh, like service of where everything belongs in personnel, that kind of thing. So I mean it just really opened my like I was making a grown up decision at a young age, and I was that's kind of where my dad guided me towards.
I mean, it's one of those things where you make that decision, you're sacrificing the years to set yourself up for the rest of your life, pretty much, when you decide to make that decision like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's, I mean, commendable, of course. So soccer, right? At the time, you thought that soccer wasn't the path, right? The path that was going to make you money. And of course, like, soccer, love soccer. But you were also a four-star safety in high school. Was that not like on your radar of, hey, maybe I could turn this into something? Was football not the passion? Like, what makes you? So you're a four-star recruit in football, which is like, the prime time sport in this country. And then you have soccer, which like you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm probably not going to make much soccer. I might not be able to make too much of this outside of getting to college. Where did that decision come into play? Like, was football ever going to be an option for you, or was that always just like something you like to do? And you just, hey, I just happen to be, 6'4", really fast, really tall, and I can match up with any receiver on a football field, so I might as well just do it for fun.
No, the thing is with me, football was always one of those things where I really enjoyed the games and I really hated practice. And that's just what it boiled down to. Like, showing up in high school, having to go to the gym um,
Yeah,
before
waking up at like
class, and
6
then
a.m. to do weights, like as like a 15-year-old.
yeah, my summers were just gone because I had to do that. And, during lunch, I'm in the head coach's like class to watch film on the team. It was just a lot. And then next thing you know, you're in practice until for 4 hours after class. Um, so I never really enjoyed like the day to day football life. It was always like Friday nights playing with people I grew up with like since elementary school, and it was just fun playing in front of your like classmates on a Friday night. Because I mean, soccer growing up, you don't get that experience. Like it's always like a club team, an academy team. It's always like playing games in front of college scouts or like your family's kind of thing.
And plus, too, it's like when you're playing soccer, you're not in high school. At least we weren't. You're not watching film, and like, you're just going out there like, hey, let's practice. You're like, yeah, all right, that sounds great. I'd love to play some soccer with my friends. Give me
Yeah,
one. Give me one
yeah.
second, Zach. My Connor's yelling at me. Give me 1 second. All right, my bad. He's a he's a menace. Kid's a menace right now. He's an absolute dare. But no, so all right, so you didn't like the practices, and then so you get a four-star rating though. You get a four-star rating. That didn't even like register. You were just like, yeah, it's cool. Peace.
Yeah, literally, basically.
What were the biggest schools that you got a football letter from?
um, I mean, dude, it was so far. I feel
So long ago.
like football and soccer are just so different because I mean, soccer you don't get like letters like colleges aren't sending you stuff like that, but um,
Right, in football you're getting like
fo-
booklets.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it like football even back then, it's just like, oh, come to a camp. Like we saw this game, we saw this huddle film footage. Like sometimes it means nothing, sometimes it means something. Like it's just one of those things. Like you get added on like a big distro list and it's plopped in there,
Yeah,
and
it's
then
more it's not really personal. It's more of just like sending out through the database.
yeah, yeah, exactly. I obviously had zero interest, so nor did I care if it was personal or not. So
Did you kick? Did you kick for the team?
no, I didn't even kick for the team. I told them I refused to kick. I said, when
Like
I'm out here, I'm not
if
even
I'm
thinking
playing this
about
sport,
soccer.
if I'm playing this sport, I'm not a kicker. Like I did not sign up to be a kicker.
Hey, hindsight's 2020 though, man.
Yeah,
That
I wish
article that
I
came
wish I
out
would have been
about
a kicker.
the Cowboys kicker.
Army Air Force. I think I know my answer now because you explained how there's a cup that's involved, like a rivalry cup. But is there not any like you're online like talking your smack about Army beating Air Force, which is great, which I love, smack apparel, talk, all that good stuff. But is there not any part of you that's like, man, Air Force is undefeated. Like they could have run the table and like gone to a New Year's Six bowl, but instead you guys beat them. You guys are three and something. And you guys beat them, and then you're kind of taking out, the brotherly love of the military. You're kind of taking them out of that picture. You like ruin their entire season. Is that not a thing? Is it all just like we ruined your season? Sucks to suck. Go Army.
No, I mean, there's no brotherly love whatsoever. Like if you go through either schools, because I've been in the Air Force Academy and like over most of the athletic department's building, it's always like beat Army, beat Navy. Like that's what it'll say at Air Force. At West Point, it's always beat Navy, beat our Army. It's like our Air Force. It's always everywhere. Like there's no like, and leading up to the week, they have like it just the whole school revolves around like that week. So it's always going to be a rivalry. Like like we're happy to mess up their perfect
Yeah, yeah. So it's like
perfect record.
equivalent. Like if you're talking like it's like Florida State, Florida. It's like any of the big
Exactly.
rivalries that you possibly have.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
exactly.
incredible.
And I'll say this though, if there's one team, because Army started going more into out of like the triple option this year for the first time in a very long time, and Air Force still runs that. And I'll say if there's one defense or offense the Army knows, it's that option offense. So I mean, 6 turnovers, like it was a disaster for a team ranked and being 8-0.
I mean, dude, you gotta be. I should have been talking to you before I make these picks. Like, yeah, that's dialed in, man. That's dialed in right there. Like, if there was ever going to be a team that was going to stop Air Force's offense, it was probably the team that had been running it for the last decade.
Yeah, exactly,
That's one thing
exactly.
about Navy too, man. Like, I think they try to change their offense a little bit, but same thing. That's a wild offense. What is it about the military schools that just like to run this power ball? Is it just like showing? It's just like showing strength at all times.
No, so I've always wondered that the same thing too. But uh, Coach Monken, actually the Army, still the Army head coach, he said when like he had a comment when he first got hired. He's like, no, we're gonna stay with this offense because other teams can run like these offenses and recruit 350-pound linemen, but because of like our height and weight standards at the time, like we can't afford like we'll get blown out of the water trying to
Maybe
do
just
this.
try to
But
play
now,
straight up.
exactly. So if you have all this deception, like these big guys don't know where they're going, don't know where to go, and next thing you know, you're on your third option, like running down the sideline for a first down.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Then if you the one time you hit him with the oop over the top, then it's like the best day ever. It's like the best play you could ever possibly think of. All right, so last one I got for you. I try to keep you guys under 30 minutes because I know nobody like likes to stick around this long. I like to, but so all right. So on a scale, have you been to an Army Navy game?
Yeah, I've been to 4.
4 of them. On a
I
scale
actually
of
went to the
like
Army Air Force game last year, but sorry.
college rivalries, is it just you think it's just the top? Is that just the best rivalry in college football that you could think of?
Oof, that's a setup question for sure.
Oh, seriously, because I mean, everybody has like, if you look at like where it's ranked in terms of tradition, where it's ranked in terms of like games that people want to go to, like a lot of things say the Army Navy is just like one of the premier football experiences that you could possibly have in terms of like pageantry, traditions, rivalries, everything involved. Is there just like a lot of like lore that surrounds that game?
Yeah, I mean, going to a game, you have, I mean, usually the president shows up and he goes from the Army side or at for the first half, and he famously switches to the other side at the second half. The military definitely brings out all the bells and whistles. They'll have like Navy SEALs parachuting in with the coin toss and the American flag, and F-16 fighter jets flying over. Like obviously they do that for some games, but it just feels different. In that game, you have both schools. Like for Army, you'll have the entire school who doesn't play football in the stands in uniform. For Navy, they do the same thing. Um, and yeah, I mean,
There's
it's
never any
usually
fights.
at
There's never any fights in the stands, are there? There can't be any
no,
fights.
I mean, I wouldn't think so.
That'd
It's
be a
actually
bad
for the
look.
first time at the Patriots Stadium this year. I don't
Is
know about
it?
the
Oh, that's
first time, but
cool.
the first time I can remember. Yeah,
Because it was always in Baltimore, right? It was always in Annapolis.
it was in either the Ravens Stadium or the Eagles Stadium.
Oh, okay. Oh, Philly, that'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe we'll put it on the bucket list. Maybe we can go to one together. Put it on the bucket list.
yeah, yeah. It's always cool because it's always the only football game going on during that day.
Yeah. Well, it's after the final week of the season, and then it's the one standalone.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Man, we got to get that on the list, bro. We got to get that on the list. We got to get that on the list. Well, man, I appreciate your time, dude. It was fun catching up, not only on this, but also as friends, man. It's been too long. We got to get you down here to Tampa.
I know, I know. I love Tampa.